Um, Welcome everyone to our workshop for today. We have a really exciting agenda for you all. Everyone likes a good panel, so we'll get to that. But today we're going to be focusing a little bit on what does it mean to be a research assistant? What are the different roles that you'll have when you do research, as well as go over some tips and tricks to kind of prepare yourself to get into a lab. What can you do? Things like that. Um, Next slide, please. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So if you have not done this yet, and if this is your first STAR Scholar workshop, welcome. Please fill out this QR code. As I mentioned earlier, it kind of just helps us get an assessment of who's in the crowd today to get a kind of feel for who's attending these workshops. We have this QR code in a little bit at the very end, but if you can fill it out now. We also have this additional QR code. This is for our winter mentorship program. I'll be talking a little bit about what this is, but if you are interested, if you already know a little bit about STAR Scholars, the STAR Scholar program, if you're interested in joining in the winter term, please go ahead, fill this out. Applications are due today, but I'll be going in a little bit detail of kind of what we look for our STAR Scholars and things like that. But if you want to just have this up ready to go, that would also be great. As a reminder, today's panel is going to be on kind of the role of a research assistant in research. We also have several amazing past STAR alumni who have come back and are willing to talk about what they're doing currently in their research, as well as some exciting stuff that they have going on. We do have about two more STAR seminars left in this series. So if you are interested in joining the next two, please go ahead, scan the QR code. I know there are a lot of QR codes, but go ahead and scan it and you can RSVP so you don't forget about these very exciting workshops that we have planned. And like I said, we have our Winter Stars program that I'll be talking about in a little bit. So today, we have a couple objectives for today's seminar. First of all, we'll be talking a little bit more detail about the Winter Star Scholar Program. I'll be talking a little bit more detail about the benefits of entering this program, as well as some information in regards to what we look for our STAR scholars, and just additional information regarding that. And then we also have, like I said, our amazing group of panelists who are past STAR alumni. I think they're all this previous year, so they're very recently graduated the STAR Scholar Program, who have agreed and are willing to share their research experience, are willing to give advice. We're going to also do an open Q&A session at the end after we kind of moderate a little bit of a panel to kind of guide the questions, but it's also going to be open, free for all, for you guys to ask our panelists any questions that you may have. So just some groundkeeping, housekeeping rules here. Please try to keep your mic muted until you're invited to speak. This is obviously more important for the panel, the Q&A part. You can use the chat to ask questions, and also live transcripts are available if you'd like to enable it. Also, please don't forget to fill out the pre-survey question if this is your first seminar. One other thing that if you do end up asking a question, if you could show your video, that would be great. If you're comfortable doing that, show us what you look like. If not, that's also okay, but it always helps to create some type of normalcy when we're on Zoom. Okay. So if this is your first workshop, you may be wondering, what is STAR? We keep saying this acronym over and over again. What does this mean? So STAR stands for Scholarship, Transferable Skills, Academics, and Research. And it's a program that's built to develop these skills within undergraduate students who are interested in either be going into research or maybe trying to explore the research area, maybe wanting to learn more professional development and try to enhance their transferable skills. So it broadly applicable. We have a couple of very important goals that we try to maintain all of our students to do. So first of all, is our major goal is to prepare students to become researchers. We do this through a couple different ways. First of all, is we have very structured mentoring by current graduate students. So for example, me and Callie are both mentors, a part of the STARS Scholar program. We typically have a group of, 2 to 3 mentees that are within the undergrad population who are interested in professional development, interested in doing research, just wanting to know a little bit more about what it means to do research in psychology. And we help them through various different ways. We do panels, we do skills coaching, we talk about what it means to develop a CV. We can do even we even talk about what it means to write a research report. What does it mean to actually analyze data? We talk about various different components of research as well as trying to strengthen their professional development skills. So, in addition to doing CVs and resume workshops, we do also mock interviews. So, regardless kind of where you are in your undergrad program, if you're just kind of starting out trying to see what research is, or if you have an idea of what research is and you're trying to get involved, there's a little bit of everything that you can take away from the STARS program. Additionally, we also try to, one of the goals of the STARS program is to increase the number of diverse students that are interested in going into research. So, in particular, we are looking for students who identify with underrepresented areas in like demographic areas. So this means that if you're first gen, if you're international or undocumented, if you identify as racially or ethnically a minority population, or if you're LGBTQ plus, any of these categories that if you check mark, you are encouraged to apply. Additionally, if you have experienced financial hardship or if you've demonstrated commitment to increasing equity or inclusion in psychology, we please encourage you to apply as well. Again, one of our goals is to try to increase the pipeline of undergraduate students who are underrepresented in research. So, a little bit more about kind of what we're looking for when we say these are our STAR Scholar. First of all, we're looking for students who have very strong academic performance. There isn't a hard cutoff in terms of GPA, but we are expecting GPAs to be relatively high. That's because the STARS program is a little time demanding. So, we don't want this to be like a burden, another thing that you do and your academics suffer. We want you to be a well-balanced student if you're enrolled into the program. Next, we also want you to show some interest in psychology or biopsych research. Now, the program is geared for students who have little to no research experience, and that's very important to us. But, let's say you've taken a class or you've worked in a lab in a different area, that's also totally okay. In the application, just make sure that you highlight or you share how you think the STARS program will help you achieve your specific goals that are related to psychology research. Yes, thank you. Also, cognitive science and neuroscience, yes. Thirdly, we also expect you to be looking for a more structured mentorship because that's really what we offer. Like I mentioned earlier, our mentors typically have groups of 2 to 3 mentees that we walk them through very specific workshops and talks and discussions with them. The Star Scholars Program is not a club or a class, it's a very structured mentorship. Series of workshops. And so we're really looking for students who would benefit from that type of program. And lastly, like I mentioned, we do prioritize underclassmen. And this is because if you're in your final year and you're going into your winter semester, you probably won't have time to use everything that you learn from the STARS program in order to pursue research opportunities. So that's really the major reason why we have that criteria. Okay. So Again, the deadline is today. So if you're interested in applying, if you want to know more, please check out our website. You can also email us, but I strongly encourage you just apply, see what happens. We're more than happy to take applications. And Dr. Lustig did also put the link in the chat, so that's perfect.
Okay, thank you, Harini, for that great overview of the program. It was very thorough and informative. So I'm going to talk about a couple tips for students before we get into the panel. So these tips are more for people that are interested in starting with undergraduate research. So if you aren't already in a research lab, or maybe you're brand new to a lab, these could also help you. I highly recommend that you also check out our other recorded workshops for more tips besides the ones we'll cover today. You can find those recordings on the STAR website that Dr. Lustig put in the chat. So first of all, you don't have to start your research position with your own research idea. And I think that this is a common misconception. A lot of undergraduates are usually really excited about research. They learned about some psychological phenomenon in their Psych 111 class or maybe a 200 level class, and they want to study something related to it, but don't have a specific question in mind, and that's totally fine. Most opportunities will start with a mentor-mentee model, meaning that you'll start out by helping a current grad student or maybe even an honors thesis student and collaborate on existing projects in the lab. And then as you learn, you may come up with your own interests and ideas that you could pursue later on. So it's not a requirement to have something going into it. You also don't need to have knowledge of the advanced skills being used in the lab before you begin. So it might be a little bit intimidating to look at a research lab and see that they're doing some sort of modeling or neuroimaging, which you find really exciting, but you've never done that before. And that's okay. Oftentimes, research assistants will start with basic tasks alongside the current lab members, and then you'll learn as you continue in the lab and work on this group project together. You'll build more extensive and advanced skills. And if you're trying to develop some new skills, maybe they have you working on a project, you feel like you've mastered it and you want to try something new, you can just ask your mentors, and I'm sure they would be excited to have you try new things. Another important point is to take advantage of your transferable skills. You're learning all kinds of things in your other classes and activities you're doing on campus. Maybe you work part-time, maybe you're the vice president of a social club, and you're learning lots of great skills. Skills like communication, initiative, analytical skills, teamwork, a strong work ethic, and being responsible. And those are all great things that could help as a research assistant. So once you're in a lab, you'll find that taking initiative will generally be rewarded. Graduate students, speaking from my experience, really notice that and appreciate that. So you can go deeper by letting a lab manager or your supervisor know that you're interested in maybe reading papers that relate to the purpose of the lab or project if you haven't done that yet. And again, having worked with undergraduate RAs myself, I know that the ones who ask questions are signaling to me that they're ready for more responsibility and they're taking a deep interest in the topic that we're studying. And so that's exactly what you want to do if your goal is to go to graduate school or pursue a career in research. Okay, so now we're going to introduce our undergraduate research panel. We will ask our panelists to unmute and answer questions and also introduce themselves. But for them to answer questions that resonate with them, it's okay if you don't feel like you can answer every single question. But if you have a question that you feel like relates to you or you've experienced in some way and you want to jump in and answer that, please do that. Also, for the attendees here that aren't part of the panel, we invite you to ask questions during the panel using the chat, but we will wait to read your questions until after our structured questions have ended. So we'll let you know when we're out of questions that we have, and then we'll go through the chat and read some of the questions that you have then.
Okay, so to our amazing panelists, as you guys get ready and unmute and have your cameras up, we would like you to first kind of start out by sharing your class year, your major, and then you can talk a little bit more about the research that you're working on, the roles that you have, just as like an introduction to our attendees. I'm just gonna call on people just to make this process a little bit easier. So I'm gonna have Annabella go first, if that's okay.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Annabella. I am a senior studying psychology with a minor in community action and social change. Um, I was a star 2 years ago, I think, so a little bit longer removed, but I love to come talk about my experiences. I've been in a couple labs. I'm currently working on my own thesis with Dr. Lustigs on that as well, so it's great to see you. Is there anything else I missed?
If you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit about maybe the role that you have in your lab right now. If you want to talk a little bit more about the research that you're doing, that's also amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, well, we can just quickly go through the labs since there's just a few of them. In the Rage lab, the Emotion Self-Control lab, and the Whirl lab, I work as a research assistant, doing different tasks like data cleanup, running participants, literature reviews. In the Lee lab, I work on as a research manager of a specific project under Dr. Fiona Lee. And then on my thesis, which is outside of all these labs, I did lead an undergraduate team of RAs to help me with data analysis on my thesis about Asian American adoptees and the role of color evasiveness on their relationships with their white parents.
perfect. Thank you. And we'll be asking, just so you all know, we'll be asking our panelists several questions. But if you have anything in particular, you can file it away for now. Next up, I'm going to have Hannah go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah. I am a senior here at Michigan, majoring in psychology and minoring in French. I've been a research assistant in two labs. The first one being the cognitive and affective neuropsychology lab with Dr. Reuter Lorenz and Callie and Harini as grad students. And I am currently in the Whirl lab, which is under Dr. Amy Gordon. And I am on the stress contagion project in that lab. So my tasks really just include going over videos of participants and individuals completing tasks and kind of noting down what I see coding, different behavioral patterns, and just noting down anything else that I pick up on. It is a social psychology lab, so we are kind of, observing behavior in a social context. And it's been very great. It's very different from my last lab, which was neuropsychology related, but I think it's great to kind of be able to, expand my horizons and tap into different forms of psychology research. And yeah, it's a great lab that I'm in currently. We go over results then, and we obviously report back to the grad students who are leading the project. And yeah, it's been very, very interesting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Hannah. Seth, I'm going to have you go next.
Hi everyone, my name is Seth. I'm a senior. I'm in the TAD lab, which is the Translational and Developmental Neuroscience lab under Dr. Christopher Monk. The project that we're currently working on is the study of adolescent to adult neural development, which is basically a longitudinal study that uses a bunch of survey data in addition to fMRI data to examine how material hardship, so like um, being a minority or socioeconomic status influences um, various like psychopathology outcomes over the course of adolescence to adulthood. And currently so that's the main project that the lab does. I'm writing my honors thesis through that lab, um, which has been really great. They have like a lot of graduate students and wonderful mentors that are available to help me with that. So that's been awesome. And as a research assistant, I primarily run study visit days. So that's when participants come in and we collect all the data from them. Um, in addition to several other tasks like data entry and management, um, quality checking of the brain scans that we collect, and then diagnosis consensus of clinical interviews.
Very cool. Emilio, I'm going to have you go next.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Emilio. I work in three separate labs at the University of Michigan, and then I'm also working on an honors thesis through one of them. I'm in the Cognitive and Affective Neuropsychology lab with Harini and Callie. I'm in the Odyssey lab, which is an interdisciplinary lab between the Ross Business School and psychology department. And that looks at IO, industrial and organizational psych. And then I am a part of the emotion and self-control lab, which is more on the social side, and the Department of Psychology. And I am a research assistant in two of those labs and a lab manager in one. A lot of what my research assistant position consisted of is honestly email, cold calling participants, making sure recruitment is being done and effective, getting through a lot of that. In some cases, I actually execute protocols with certain experiments with participants. That's through the Odyssey Lab and Emotion and Self-Control Lab. I do data coding as well with transcription for gestures as a part of the Emotion and Self-Control Lab, and a whole host of other things. As a lab manager through the Odyssey Lab, I do one-on-one discussions with RAs in the lab to make sure that they're doing well. I also manage a few RAs when we actually run experiments and do participant recruitment through our experiments as well, and then assist with actually pulling together some higher level participants for the greater study of the lab that deals with looking for executives in leadership positions and business organizations and talking to them about various things like how busyness affects their life, both personally and in the workspace. And then my honors thesis is focusing on the impact of personal support in immigrant families and future success factors for an individual.
Okay, wow, thank you. Next, Anne.
Hi. So I work in two labs. I work mainly right now in the stigmatized sexualities lab under Dr. Terry Conley. And I also work in the ESP lab, the evolutionary social psych lab under Dr. Joshua Ackerman. Mainly right now, under the ESP lab, I worked as a lab assistant, particularly as someone coding transcribed scripts. In addition to, I was a proctor, helping set up surveys. Apart from that, in the stigmatized sexualities lab, I am a senior honors thesis student there, working on looking at gender differences in sexuality.
Thank you. And lastly, Kavya.
Hi, I'm Kavya. So I'm a senior and I'm double majoring in computer science and psychology and minoring in business. So I currently work for the Cognition Control and Action Lab. And so my current role is that I'm working on my honors thesis focused in attentional focus. And I've actually been my whole time in the lab, I've been building this experiment from the ground up. So I've been starting it from the very beginning and coding the whole thing. And now I'm finally running participants and analyzing data, which is really, really cool. Another experience I had, kind of orthogonal, not super related to psychology, but still somewhat. I also used to work for the School of Information as a research assistant, and I used to work in a lot of, tech policy related things and in deepfake sexual abuse, which was really interesting. But that's some of my experience. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as you can see, we have a wide range of research experiences to pick from. The first question I have for you guys, and feel free, whoever, we will have multiple people answering these questions, but first question here is, why did you choose to get involved in research? Was there a point in maybe beginning early undergrad career, maybe even high school, that kind of led you to want to start this?
Yep. So first, let me pop up and just say that I'm having technical issues. So there we go. We should be back. Sorry about that.
I can answer this question to start. So I came into undergrad not even knowing that I wanted to like major in psychology. And shortly after taking my first Psych 111 class, I realized that this was my area of interest. And I just did my research and browsed the type of careers that could stem from my degree. And my interest really just led to pursuing a PhD, and that's what I intend to do. So the whole point for me of getting involved in research is to, one, figure out what type of research I want to do in the long run and when I'm pursuing further education, and also just to prepare myself. I know that pursuing a PhD in any role is very research heavy and it's a lot of work. So I want to start now, prepare myself, and just make myself a strong candidate and get equipped with all types of research.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. Sorry, I like can only see a few of you. Um, I have a similar path. I've always been interested in research. I did AP capstone and AP research back in high school. So I was able to like kind of get a touch of what research kind of was before coming into college. In a similar way, I also want to pursue a PhD. I specifically want to work on studying something that affects like my community as an Asian American. So getting into college, I really wanted to start looking for building those skills in different research labs and getting intradisciplinary skills across social, psychology, and other psychology labs just to see kind of what methodologies are used and what skills I kind of needed to conduct my own research.
Yeah, similar to Annabella, I'm actually highly interested in pursuing a clinical psychology PhD, but for the reason that she gave on the interdisciplinary aspects, that's really what I wanted to look at during my research experiences here at the University of Michigan. I wanted to do clinical psychology, but I also saw that clinical neuropsychology was an option as opposed to just regular therapy. And I got super interested in that. So, really going through social, neuropsych, and industrial organizational psychology as different disciplines here, I'm able to look at different methodologies, see how things are done in different ways, and try to bring that in to my research interests and what I want to do for later therapeutic intervention, and then also have some contribution to actual research later down the line. So going through each of these labs was a great way for me to take a look at a few different disciplines and really narrow down what I wanted to do in clinical psychology, given that there are a few different routes you can go down with it.
Yeah, and kind of like what the others say, I was interested in research at a very young age, around high school, mainly in the field of human sexuality, which is a very like niche field, and there aren't a lot of researchers in it, and it provides a lot of important information for humans' well-being. And I found that the reason why I wanted to get into research at the University of Michigan was to kind of understand the process of how to start it, where do I learn, and all that.
I don't know if we have time to like hear from everyone, but yeah, similarly to what everyone said, I originally came to Michigan because I knew it was like a big research school and there was a large community for research, especially in psychology here. Um, and I guess I had a little bit more of like a different path because I originally wanted to go to medical school and my like career as a research assistant has really opened my eyes into different um like fields and paths for me. And so it kind of led me to like what everyone else said, want to pursue a PhD instead and go into clinical psychology. And I think if I hadn't experienced this and been in a research lab, I wouldn't have landed on this, which I think has been really great.
Yeah, I also just don't want to take up too much time with this question, but definitely coming into college, I had like no idea that I wanted to go into research. I actually only added on my psych major as a sophomore, so I had no idea I even wanted to go into the space at all. And so I like happened upon my lab. They needed someone to code. It really worked out that I was a CS major. Um, and so they were just like really happy about that. And I was like, great. And I joined my lab. I was really happy. I love working with everybody in there. And what's actually funny is like I think now like I'm not even sure I want to go into like anything like cognition related in the future, but it's still such an amazing experience. Like I was like writing out like a template of like all the things I've like done and learned in this lab in like the past like 3 years, and it was like so many soft skills and so many amazing things that are so transferable to other things. So like I think even if like opportunities come by that you're like fit for, but like they're not exactly what you want to pursue, it's so they're still so great because like you'll just learn so much. And yeah, I guess that's kind of my experience with my lab.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, one theme I've heard so far is that it was just something that a lot of you guys were like, let me just see what happens. And you got in, and now you've like learned all these amazing skills. We do have some questions about like transferable skills, things like that, that we'll kind of tease apart a little bit later. But I'm really interested now to kind of talk about like, how did you find the research that you're doing right now? Even like how many labs did you apply for? When did you apply for these labs? What did you do to get into your position if you had applied multiple times, did not get in? What did you think kind of strengthened your CV or your resume to try to get you into the labs that you're working in right now?
I guess I'll start.
Mhm.
Mainly, I actually reached out to my advisor who I had shown that I had interest in research, and they had directed me to a research database that had a list of great databases that it's kind of hard to find on the website if you don't know where to look. And I was really lucky to have that resource when like finding what labs do what fields under the labs, areas like that. And I guess like mainly I applied early. I applied to I think probably five, six labs and got two interviews. The first lab that I was interviewing, it wasn't really what I wanted to do. The second lab was amazing. Um, I dressed to impress, and yeah.
When did you apply? Just so we have some like, was it like beginning, sophomore, junior year?
I'm a transfer student. I actually got here junior year, so I applied right before the start of the trimester.
Okay.
I can go. I started looking at research in high school. So I worked at Wayne State University as a research technician in social work, just by cold emailing, just reaching out to professors who I thought were interesting and was like, are you doing anything that you're looking for help on? So then when I got to the University of Michigan, I was trying to pull it up just now, and I think I emailed probably like 20 people, and I got like one interview. And it or like two interviews and one of them didn't go through. So like it was definitely like a trial and error, and like you have to definitely figure out like it's okay if people are saying no. A lot of all the professors were super nice and like don't have any positions right now, but like keep an eye on this or gave me suggestions. So definitely reaching out is always great. um and then from there, I it was kind of knowing people to get into other things. So I had networked with some of these people early on, and they had then come back, ran into me by chance and said like, I'm doing another project and would love to have you on it. So that's what happened with two of my labs. One lab I work in, the Rage lab, I was in the professor's class. So if you're in any classes that are a little bit more specific than just like Psych 111, but if you're taking like a developmental psychology or a social psychology that you really like what the professor's talking about, definitely just having a quick coffee chat, going to office hours, talking about their research with them is super helpful. And then lastly, my thesis, I was working on an independent project with the School of Social Work, and then because I was a star and knew Dr. Lustig, I was able to then collaborate with her in getting this to be more psychology based.
Now, Annabelle, I just have a quick follow-up for you. You said that I know you have multiple labs and you have a lot of different experiences. And you mentioned that you applied to 20 labs, which is a lot of labs. And honestly, that's kind of what you have to do sometimes. When you were looking at like picking and choosing what labs to apply for, what were some things that you were trying to keep in mind? Was it more of like research interest? Was it like the skills that you were going to learn? Like what was kind of going through your head at that point?
Yeah, great question. It was so long. It was my freshman year, so it was a long time ago, but it was a combination. So I applied to some of the labs just being interested in their topics. Like I am really interested in looking at psychology of race. So looking at those people, but also wanting to get those skill building really, really early on. And I think I interviewed with like an evolutionary psychology lab, and it wasn't where I originally wanted to land, but I knew that there's so many transferable skills to get and so much insight to just psychology research that it was beneficial to try to cast net wide, and emphasizing that in each email very differently. Didn't want to like overly say I was interested in the research if it wasn't true to what I was actually aiming to get from this experience.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
When I came in as a transfer as well. I took advantage of UROP, so Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program, and through there applied to, uh, there was a requirement. I think it was maybe 20 different labs at that point in time, just as a part of what you do, and got into my first lab, which was the Odyssey lab. And then after some time, it was me looking at the psychology department website for research opportunities for undergrad. There is a good spreadsheet that has a ton of different labs on there, what their discipline is, who the PI is, and then what they do, a little blurb at what they do. And that was huge for me. What I was looking for on that was focus on clinical. I had known that I wanted to go into a clinical path, so I was looking a lot at the clinical. Then I was looking at their supplementary disciplines that they were working alongside, and try to find what interested me according to my own research interests, and then started cold emailing from there. Um, to get into the cognitive affective neuropsychology lab, I actually saw that I was in class with Dr. Roy Lorenz, and then saw that there was an opening there. So I reached out and filled out a form. If people are looking at their major worksheets, you have some requirements there for labs. I looked at the form for that to see who was available, and then saw that lab. So then it was kind of doing two things at once to try and apply to it. And then ultimately got into that lab later on. And then obviously a part of the STARS program that helped give a lot of networking opportunities and some resources there to take a look at for further cold emailing.
Follow-up
Yeah.
question for you, but I forgot. It'll come to me later. But sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I actually wanna for like how I got my position, I wanted to like shout out the STARS program because that's exactly how I got or like uh of from all different labs, and it was really cool, and like they kind of told us the kinds of projects they were working on. They asked us about like what we were doing and like what we were interested in, and so at that is where I met like my grad student mentor, and she was like, here's my email me, and then like so I emailed her right away, and I was definitely overeager. I attached like I did way too much research. I think I attached like three studies she'd been a part of as my research onto it too. And then she interviewed me, and that's how I got my position. So I would definitely shout out the STARS program for that because it's a huge part of the reason I have my position today.
Great. Now a couple of our panelists have talked a little bit about the application process. So they mentioned cold emailing, they mentioned some interviews. Kavi or Emilio, do you guys want to maybe break apart what your application process was like? So cold emails that I think we've established, but what kind of came after that for you guys? Either or you guys can decide who wants to answer this question.
Yeah. So from the cold emails, I would say over half non-responses. And then the other bits, if it was a response, it was either a rejection or, hey, try again next time. We might be looking out for more RAs to bring in. And that second portion, more RAs for future, is really what I leveraged after fall semester when I first came in. Winter semester is when I started resending out emails. So once you get that nod from that lab that, hey, they may be looking for more again, feel free to send out that email again. Hey, I know winter's about to come up. Are you looking for any RAs for the new semester. And that was a good way that I got some interviews going on that side. Also, asking any of your professors, again, office hours like before, um, getting some FaceTime with them to talk about that could be treated as a little bit of a mini interview, if you will, depending on how the professor feels about it, or even a graduate student who may be a part of that lab and knows about that information to give you some information and see your face and see that you're interested. So it was follow-ups really once I got rejections in the following semester. And then, yeah, that was really the biggest thing.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I sorry.
You're good.
I
Go ahead.
just okay. I just say like in terms of like what came after like I emailed, it's just like yeah, it was just like an interview where she just wanted to know a little bit more about me and my experiences. And it was definitely like one of those situations where it was like an interview on both ends. Like she's definitely trying to figure out like what kinds of skills I had, what kinds of things I knew how to do already, but then also like on the other side, if I was interested in this research and if I would actually like be interested enough to like, be dedicated to the lab, or if I was just like wanted a lab, And so it's definitely like a two-sided thing. And yeah, that I'd say that's like very important that like as much as like you want to put your best foot forward, you also want to make sure like all of the work sounds really, really good to you, really cool, and like very good, like just amazing. Yeah.
Those are all great points. One thing I just do want to jump in and add here is that there are situations that I've experienced firsthand where I maybe have interviewed an RA or a potential RA for the position, but felt like that they would be a better fit on a different project for a lab that I know is recruiting, or even a different project we have in our lab, which has happened a few times. And so it's also great to just network and let your professors know who you are if you're interested in their research. Let your graduate student instructors know who you are and go to their office hours, because there are quite a few students who I've hooked up with research positions just from them being in my classes or them having interviewed with me, but I felt like they were a better fit somewhere else. So definitely not just the cold emailing, because that does help, but if you already have some people in your circle that you see pretty regularly, those are good resources as well. So we're actually going to switch gears a little bit now to talking about roles and responsibilities of your research position now that you have it. And so my first question is kind of related to something I mentioned as a tip earlier. Regarding lab meetings and getting involved. And so, do you all attend lab meetings or work with other students? And how much do you work with other students? Do you work with grad students? What has your experience been like with that?
I can just start with my experience. So in my last experience with Callie and Harini, I like would see them in lab. We'd be in the same spaces and different rooms, but I feel like I was majority working with like my other fellow research assistants, and like the lab manager, which we got a little later, was kind of like who I was speaking with the most, and then I would ask the grad students questions and stuff like that. So that was my first experience. And in my current experience, we have bi-weekly lab meetings where we talk about all the data that we've like collected independently and just go over the results. And they like let us know what they're doing with our results. And in the room that my lab room, I guess, there are only two computers that the research assistants can work with at a time. So I'm not constantly with a bunch of my fellow research assistants like I was in my first lab, but I still get to see them a good amount, and we communicate well. I see them at the lab meetings, and I think it's really interesting to have lab meetings, and I honestly like that because I think that it kind of lets everyone know like what page we're all on, and it like kind of builds a sense of like inclusivity and community, which I definitely can appreciate.
I can talk about this as well. My lab is really large, and there is probably around like 15 or 20 undergrads that are also working as part of this study. So we have regular once every 2 week meetings that are just for all of the RAs and our lab managers to just sort of give updates and they do like professional development workshops and things like that, which have been really nice. But then depending on which element of the project we're on, we have meetings with the managers that are in charge of those things. So we have a lot of lab managers as well, and they each do different things. So we have recruitment managers and data managers. Um, and so depending on which tasks you're assigned in the lab, you'll have regular meetings with those managers as well. And those are either like again, just updates and going over like how things are progressing. Usually, because most of our study data has already been collected, we're just working on like quality checking and things like that. Or like with recruitment of participants, they're just checking on like the progress of that. And then they're also regularly training people on new things all the time. Um, so yeah, I would say we meet with managers quite frequently. And then because there's so many of us, um, people are in like our undergrad office all the time. And so I feel like I interact with other undergrads like quite a bit. And I've met some of like my really good friends through working here. So yeah.
Those are some really great points. Does anyone else want to chime in, or I could
Yeah.
also, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so from my experience, so I work relatively in smaller labs, and lab meetings are great to just kind of catch up because a lot of us are working on usually like 3 or 4 different projects in the lab, and sometimes we encounter a lot of problems that we need a fresh new pair of eyes to look at. So it's a great place to kind of collaborate and just help each other. And in addition to, I work with undergrads and grad students in my evolutionary social lab, mainly in the smaller labs. It's just mainly undergraduate students among ourselves. But yeah.
I can also quickly jump in. I am in a couple of the bigger labs. Like people have mentioned, there are lab meetings. There are some things that are like there's like lab meetings, like whole lab where we do more like discussions and like we've done a book club, things like that. And then there's also like project meetings. So like if you're on specific projects in a very big lab, you'll probably meet with your grad student and the other RAs who are on the project. And then in like really, really small labs, for me it's the Lee Lab. I work directly with the PI and with a graduate student. So it really depends on the size of the lab and like the project and who's like directly involved with the things you're working on.
Yeah, and Annabella makes a great point, which is a point I was also going to bring up, is just that each lab differs. So the environment that you're in and what you'll be doing and who you'll be working with differs from lab to lab, but it can also differ within the lab itself. Some weeks you might meet with just the grad student, other weeks you might have bigger lab meetings. And so just keeping that in mind, maybe it's a good question to ask in your interview if you're thinking of things that you can ask during those. So, for those of you who have been in the lab for a little bit of a longer extended period, what tasks did you start out performing? So, when you first joined the lab, and then how did that progress over time? So, as you have continued in the lab and put your time in, how did what you worked on differ from at the beginning to what maybe you do now?
I can answer this one. Um, so I've been in the lab for I think almost 2.5 years. Um, or maybe closer to 3. I honestly lost track. But um, when I first started out with the lab, they put everybody on recruitment because that is the task that has like the lowest retention, because it just involves calling participants, and that's something that a lot of people don't want to do. Um, and so, yeah, they have 2 tasks that are pretty much like they put all of the new undergrads on because that's what needs to get done the most. And you don't like get priority to kind of choose what you want to do until you've been there for longer. So my main tasks were recruitment and data entry, which just involved like putting all of the visit data into REDCap. And those were pretty like menial and like I didn't like them so much because I didn't really get to experience what the actual research itself was about. It was just kind of helping the lab run smoothly, which is obviously important. But it was nice because as I stayed there longer, I got to kind of have more of a priority over things that I wanted to do. And the lab managers and the graduate students and the PIs have gotten to know me better and know that I'm like reliable. So they've put me on different tasks that sometimes like I'm the only person that's doing a task because it's like something temporary and like it only needs one person and they know they can just reach out to me because I've been there for longer. So for example, like right now I'm in charge of we call it diagnosis consensus, and basically we do structured clinical interviews with our participants, and we have to go over those interviews with our clinical psychologist. And so I'm the like undergrad liaison between the examiners, which are the lab managers and the grad students, and the clinical psychologist. So yeah, that's just an example of like being somewhere for longer. You can sort of take over tasks that are more interesting and maybe you're the only one working on them. And like for me, that was preferable because I find the like clinical interview super interesting as someone who wants to go into clinical psych, as opposed to the more like neuroimaging heavy tasks.
Those are all
Uh,
great points, and I think it highlights, the starting out task versus the more advanced tasks once they, learn your skill set and your interests. Did someone else want to chime in here?
yeah. So for me personally, I started out doing like shadowing people doing survey interviews, and then I progressed to independent wise. And as of right now, I am currently working with other grad students on designing a new survey protocol. So yeah.
That's great. Also, just emphasizing the point of starting out maybe with smaller tasks and then getting into more bigger tasks. A lot of us too talked about how they're doing an honors thesis, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail later, but you kind of have to work your way up to that point. So, thank you both for emphasizing that. And so, what are some of the transferable skills that you use or have used in your role that apply to other settings? I know Kavya mentioned this earlier, but she unfortunately had to leave for a class, which isn't that unfortunate because learning is awesome. But so she can't speak on this, but maybe some other people could chime in here and talk about some transferable skills that they've noticed in their experience.
Big one for me is project and time management. So really when you're in the lab, even if as an RA and starting out, understanding timelines on when things are needed, when you have to either recruit participants, call participants, if you need to schedule a certain event, that is crucial to making not only the lab run smoothly, but then contributing to the lab in a very effective way to make sure that the results of the study actually get bolstered and supported by what you're doing in that moment. And being able to manage a lot of those micro tasks apart from just the recruitment process, if you have to score anything, if you have to make sure there's organization in the office done in a particular way, or keep track of something on a spreadsheet or in RedCap, if you do data entry like that, is a huge transferable skill that's going to be amazing across any domain. If later on you decide not to do anything psychology related and you go into an industry or something like that, that's going to be huge. That's bar none one of the best things about getting into a lab is that project and time management ability.
All great points. Did anyone else want to chime in here?
I guess I can add one more piece.
Sure.
um, when it comes down to actually doing the recruitment, like a few others had mentioned, when you're an RA, a lot of times you're going to be the one doing the calls, maybe doing the emails. Uh, it could be a good way to get out of being a little shy with it and be a little bit more expressive and be a little bit more of a go-getter with it, right? If you want to really bring in numbers and execute on taking care of 20 participant calls in a day or something like that, it allows you to shake off some of that nervous attitude or anxious attitude about it and just realize that, hey, you got to get it done and go through the protocol. That's another skill that you can really develop being a part of a research lab like this is getting through some of that fear, anxiety.
That's a great point, and I feel like that's a point that's maybe less talked about than some other transferable skills. So thank you for highlighting that. Did anyone else want to jump in here? Or I can also talk about my view as a graduate student, what I think undergraduate RAs learn. But if anyone else wants to chime in here.
I think just like super quickly, one thing that's definitely helped me, like one skill that I've definitely picked up was because we hire new undergrads so often, a lot of times like lab managers don't have time to train them on things themselves. And so being one of the senior undergrads has really given me the opportunity to train a lot of new people on things. And so that I'm able to like put that on my CV or on my resume as like a leadership skill, as holding meetings and holding trainings myself without like supervision.
That's a great point, and that's a great responsibility that you have as well. That's definitely transferable. From my point of view, and I can talk a little bit, if anyone else wants to jump in, just let me know. But I feel like my RAs and RAs that work in our lab, which is what I can really speak to, are able to learn new things pretty quickly. I mean, you join a research lab and you've never done research before, so you learn a ton of new stuff pretty quickly, and you can continue to evolve that, but you kind of have to, learn a lot of new things right off the bat. So that's one thing. Organization, so keeping records of things and keeping track of things, because usually how this works in research is that you're not the only person working on a document. And so you need to keep it organized so other people can find stuff too. Another great one is critical thinking, which you probably learn in some of your classes, but in research and it's in a different context and it's usually more applied work. And so it's critical thinking, but in a different kind of realm than maybe what you're used to. Along with that is problem solving. There might be a situation in which there is an issue. And so maybe you try to figure out what's causing that issue before you bring it to your grad student and you talk through how to handle that together. Some people earlier talked about how they're in a research lab with other RAs and lab managers, and they've talked about how they had a lot of face-to-face time with them. And so you're learning teamwork and collaboration and communication skills there as well. So there are tons of transferable skills that being in research labs help with. Did anyone else want to share an experience? Or I can also move on to the next question. Going once. Going.
Kelly, I think I might actually have the next question. So I will
Great.
also just go ahead and pipe in here too. So you hit on one that I was going to mention, which was the teamwork aspect and learning how to work with people who are from all different kind of backgrounds and so on. It's not quite as much the case now, but like we used to joke for a while in my lab that, a lot of our research assistants, the phrase we use is they were not friends in high school. They were from people who were from, sort of very different social groups and, that kind of thing. But everybody was able to get along and support each other. And I think really, that also made it a really fun and interesting experience for them too, because you really do learn the value of having all of those different perspectives. One thing I think you guys also touched on a little bit, but I want to emphasize is communication because as I think Amelia mentioned, like having really clear communication with the other people in your lab, with your graduate students, like it's absolutely critical to keeping things running. But also, as some of you mentioned, also advocating for yourself, like being able to speak up and say like, hey, I think I'm ready for, the next opportunity, take a look at me for this. If you want to advance in a career, you got to be able to go to the boss and be like, hey, I think I'm ready for the next responsibility and the pay raise that comes with that. So I guess let me mention this one. I think a couple of you, a couple of you I know, and a few others of you may have mentioned whether you're doing an honors thesis. And I guess if you could also talk about your decision to either do one or if you decided not to do one, what weighed into that decision, because it is a big time commitment.
Yeah, so for me, making the decision to do an honors thesis really aligned with my goals to go to graduate school. And knowing that the clinical psychology discipline and area as a whole is extremely competitive, wanted to be as prepared as possible to not only one, apply for it just as a kind of checkbox item, but
Hmm.
really involve myself into understanding what it takes to do research. And for mine, it's independent. So it's not a part of a study that's running with my lab, any one of my labs. So doing this as an independent research project from end to end, start to end really is something that I wanted to build skills for, to prepare myself for what I expect the rigor to be in PhD programs. So that's really what's behind my decision. I kind of felt it personally as a must do, maybe not explicitly an honors thesis, but at least a senior thesis for anyone considering it, right? So yeah, that's about my experience.
And on the other hand, I am not doing an honors thesis. So any undergraduate students, let this be kind of like your hope if you end up not doing one, the world won't end. But I just I would have considered it more, but I studied abroad last semester. So I kind of when I came back to Michigan, I had to kind of shift labs and like switch gears. And I didn't want to have to try to find a mentor so quickly and then force a relationship just to just so I could write an honors thesis because I do have the plan to continue research post grad. I do want to eventually go into a clinical PhD program, but I am planning on going to do a post-bac program for a year or 2 years, so I know that my research skills will continue to improve. I am working on like certain projects that I want, like through my upper level writing course, for example. We write papers in that course, and I like immediately spoke to my professor and I asked her would I be able to kind of use this as like a research, like thesis type of thing? Because I am conducting my own research in a way, and it's something that I will write on research that I'm analyzing. So that's the route I'm taking with it. I
Hmm.
think that writing an honors thesis is something that's super important, and I think that it does really set you up well. But I think that, you know, if you choose not to do that, just think of ways that you can try to attempt to make up for that and just stay on top of your research skills.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think one of the things that we emphasize in STAR is that everybody has their own journey. And so, like, I'm sure that the studying abroad was an amazing experience. And like, sometimes it's like, look, there are so many hours in the day and so many days in the year. You got to choose and figure out how to prioritize. The other thing I just wanted to explain for a second for anybody who's not familiar with the term post-bac. So a lot of times, and this is especially true for folks who are thinking about going into clinical, um, a lot of times people will work for a year or two as a research assistant after they graduate from their undergraduate. And in some ways, this can be a really amazing time because you get to really focus on the research and also just like living your life without also taking classes and having all of the other responsibilities. So, you get to sort of focus on like, okay, who am I as, like a 20, 30 something year old person? And how do I want to, have my life and also really like focus on the research, decide if it's what you want to do. So that can be a really great path to take as well. Anybody else want to pipe in?
Sure. So I'm currently doing an honors thesis right
Yeah.
now. And I think the main reason for me, like Emilio said, was just to get a understanding of how like from front to end of how it works. And in addition to, I think an honors thesis for me personally, really beneficial. It's just able to like work with others also when you're like encountering a lot of these problems that you'll probably encounter in your when you're doing your PhD, like how what mechanisms are is there where I can solve these problems, and it's yeah, as you guys have previously said, teamwork.
Great. So have any of you either presented your results at a conference or, planning to, or help participate in writing them up for research or for a research article? Because it's great that we get to do the science that we find interesting, but eventually we got to tell the world about it too.
Yeah. I have presented my honors thesis originally in the preliminary results to a couple places. We have got a lot of great places here at the University of Michigan. I did the Weinberg Conference and
Great.
cognitive science. I did the psychology department one that we put on for the thesis students. And I also was able to present my results at APA Division 45, so a bigger conference that was thankfully here, which was great, but actually had scholars in the field that I was really interested in. It was really great to one, get experience on presenting and being able to talk about my research, and also hearing feedback and being able to talk to people about why I made the decisions, and maybe since I was in the preliminary state at that point, what that could kind of do, what I could do to analyze it, or what things I should be considering, or things like that. And then shifting a little bit, I'm starting to work on the process of writing a manuscript with my lab, and like trying to get like it off the ground to start this sharing with the world. So I've done a little bit of both.
Great, and thank you for mentioning some of the things that you enjoyed about the experience too, because I imagine for a lot of people that could initially sound wildly terrifying.
Yeah, for
Anybody else?
me, not my honors thesis, but
Okay.
for previous, through the Europe program, they have you go through a symposium.
Yep.
And I did a presentation of one of our research studies there, had a poster, actually talked about the research at the event with some of my other lab mates. And that's honestly a great experience. You get to really stand behind the work that you've been a part of, that you participated in, and then have a little bit more of a stake into it. You get a little bit more of a feeling, a little bit more tied to the work that's actually being done. And it tells you whether or not that you're interested in that type of work, and that type of ability to stand next to your work, explain it, and try and get some others interested in the topic.
Yeah, you really feel that ownership of it when you're like, oh yeah, I actually do know how to talk about this stuff. Okay, so last question. Some of you already mentioned this, but how has your work as a research assistant sort of influenced your career goals, or sort of your abilities or your confidence in achieving them? Or if you already answered that, if you want to say, something you've learned about yourself through the process of being involved in research.
Yeah, being a research assistant, and especially moving up the, I don't want to say seniority, but like getting the skill sets to really do more diverse things, really solidified that I want to do a PhD in psychology. Um, So it was really being able to then like learn we start from like the data cleaning, and then you're zooming out and you're conceptualizing studies and you're thinking about writing, and that really, those tasks really build your confidence in, I am competent enough to join a PhD program, and also like I'm enjoying this process, and I really am excited to do this with topics that I'm specifically interested in.
I think something for me was I already kind of mentioned that joining a lab um, pushed me to my career goal, which is to do a PhD in clinical psych. But joining a lab, I didn't know what research I was interested in at all. I just knew that I wanted to join one and I wanted to do research. And I got very lucky that I joined one that I found the research super interesting. And because we collect such a wide range of data in this project, like we collect data about like just about everything, that really pointed me in the direction of the kind of research that I want to do. Which like my honors thesis is about the effects of early life adversity on the development of pain in adulthood. And I never would have landed on the pain space, or just this general area of research, if I hadn't um, gotten into this lab. So definitely, like, I was lucky, but I think just being part of the research experience, even if you don't end up loving the lab that you're in or loving the project, knowing what you don't like will help you figure out what you do like. So, yeah.
I think for myself, the research experience really allowed me to kind of evaluate the ability to time manage, because you people depend on you and kind of that teamwork process for them to for you to help others too. So I think it kind of forced me to have better time management.
Anybody else want to answer that question before we open it up to questions from our audience? All right. Anybody else who has any other questions, feel free to, either unmute or pop them into the chat, whichever you prefer. And I know it's scary, but you can do it. Oh, I have one in the chat. So what do you think makes a student stand out as a potential RA? And what do you look for in an RA, especially in first year students? So those of you who've also done some lab managing, it would be great if you in particular could speak to that one, maybe.
Yeah, I worked with recruiting undergraduates for my project over the summer. So I sent out an application. I had probably like 50 people to go through and make a decision between.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very intimidating, but it was a lot of things I looked for with recruitment to my project, and I can only assume the graduate students and Dr. Lussick can agree, is one, passion towards like the topic. Two, I was really keen on wanting to see skill, like them wanting skill development as well, just because if people were coming in with like lots and lots of skills, I really wanted to make sure I was diversifying who was getting chances to be involved in research and really thinking critically about people's positionality, because my topic was working with deductive analysis. And then also, it went with a lot of the interview, like how was the personal skills? Could I see myself in meetings with this person? Do I see them taking responsibility and being able to, I can give them a task for a week and then come back and check in with them and not have to completely be hands-on with them constantly.
Yeah, I think a few of those points are pretty huge. The ability for an individual to take initiative is excellent, and that can be expressed in many different ways, especially if you're applying, cold emailing, or just trying to get in front of a GSI or a professor, showing that you have interest and that you've actually done some research into the lab, or if a particular GSI is doing a specific project, which they are, as a part of that lab, that you understand a little bit about their work, or you've read one of their papers and are interested in the field as a whole, and you can potentially relate a concept or theory to that thing. That's going to give you some extra gold stars on top of what's going on in that interview. Or if it's just a cold email reading through, okay, they were able to actually look at my research. They called it out by reference. They were actually able to tie a concept to something that they're interested in, and it showed some competency there. That shows a lot of initiative, and that's going to be a very standout person for any RA position or any position outside of an RA as well, that you can actually synthesize that information and then present it in a clear way, showing that you are truly interested on that particular project and that group.
Yeah, I'll just pipe in and emphasize that like we can sniff out pretty quickly if somebody is just looking for a check mark on the resume. And that is typically not what we're looking for. I will just pipe in and say, like, if you one other thing that can help, honestly, is by being in STAR. Is that a lot of our faculty will prioritize people who have been in STAR when they apply for their positions if they have an opening, because they know, first of all, you have shown the commitment of like you've gone through this semester long program, so you're at least that interested. And then, you spend the semester sort of learning a lot of these soft skills. So you learn, how to put together, a good CV. You learn how to communicate with people. You also learn, like how to read a research paper, how to do some data analysis skills. And so they know, like, if you come through STAR, that you come through, like, having been well trained, you're really ready now to start learning the specific skills that are needed for that lab and really hit the ground running. So again, just another plug for if you're thinking about joining the winter mentoring program, I would encourage you to do so because it also gives you a leg up. The other one, and I think several of you who are in STAR took advantage of this, is that we don't require it in the program, but we heavily encourage people to actually build specific skills and do these certificates that demonstrate that you've learned a particular skill with Excel or with Python or with qualitative coding. And we actually surveyed the different labs to find out which skills are most in demand so we can point you to the right workshops. So that's another good way to get a leg up. Any other questions?
If I could just pipe in here from a graduate student perspective really quickly, I agree with everything that's been said so far, but from an interviewing standpoint, I also just want to say that it's okay if you don't have research experience. In my experience, I haven't been recruiting people for that reason. I've been recruiting any stage if they have research experience, if they haven't had research experience. But what is important is if you don't have research experience, to just kind of show that you, one, are willing to learn and want to learn, and two, that you've kind of done some introspection that you want to be in the lab. And going back to that transferable skills discussion, there are plenty of times where I ask students who don't have research experience, well, do you have skills that could be applied to research? And that question kind of throws them off sometimes. And so maybe if you don't have research experience, you might want to spend a little bit of extra time thinking about what kinds of skills are applicable to research that you do have and highlight those in the interview.
All right, if we don't have, oops, let's see, do we have another? So somebody asked to follow up. I know that cold emailing is a crucial starting point. When's a good time to be cold emailing labs, as in what point in the semester or undergrad period, and what point in the applicant's level of experience? I understand students should be somewhat knowledgeable about the field, but also that lab managers appreciate when they have potential, when students have potential to grow.
I can take this question, I think.
Yeah.
Even though I don't have experience as a manager, I communicate with my managers quite a lot. So I know that most labs, if they do have ability, like if they do have the space to hire new undergrads, they're kind of looking for them. Like if they're looking, let's say you're thinking about applying for the upcoming winter semester, those labs are probably going to start looking for students in the middle of the previous semester. So a good rule of thumb is just to think about when you want to start. And I would say apply a little bit earlier than the middle of the previous semester. So even though like you would still have a good chance, I think, of applying like in mid-fall, it's better to sort of like hit the ground running and just be one of like, obviously you can't control whether or not you're one of the first applicants, but the earlier you start, the better. And then another way to tell is sometimes when you're doing your research on labs that you want to join, labs will have websites, and not all of them, but some of them will say whether or not they're accepting new RAs for the upcoming semester. So definitely just be thorough and do your research and look at lab websites. And yeah, so those would be my two things. So middle of the previous semester and look at the website.
Yeah. The other one I would say is look in the undergrad psych newsletter.
And just to add on to that, I believe the psychology database also has a section on whether the professors are accepting students in the next trimester.
Yeah. Also, as Callie mentioned earlier too, ask your GSIs because the graduate students talk to each other.
Hi, this is Krishna here. I had a question. Yeah. First of all, thank you all so much for your time. This is super helpful for all of us. So my question is around research questions, I mean, like spanning across labs. Like I see many of you are working in multiple labs. I wanted to understand if any research project, like, does it involve multiple labs participating in like one big question, or is it like every research lab is like standalone working on one topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really dependent on the project. So, some of the labs I'm in are really strong and like are just doing kind of their own question and answering that with one project. And I've been on projects like that. And then with my thesis, I work with Dr. Lustig and I also work with the School of Social Work. So I've bridged them through a project. So it can kind of depend on what the PI is doing, what the graduate students are doing, maybe what your question is if you're ending up doing research that might need expertise beyond just one lab. That also doesn't mean that there's not collaboration that isn't like super official. Like sometimes people are on the same two projects or also like if you are just asking a question like, hey, I need a little bit more strength in this methodology or this question that is related to a different lab or a different topic.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say that's exactly right, is that, some labs are really, like they have their own specific projects and then some really collaborate with each other a lot. So it's unfortunate that Kavya had to leave us because she works in one of the labs that tends to have a lot of outreach to other labs too. So, and actually, I think World Lab, you guys collaborate a lot with Luke Hyde's lab, right?
I know they
Or
collaborate
no, actually, no,
self-control.
okay. I'm thinking of the Sand Lab. Sorry, it's hard
Yeah,
to keep.
I was gonna
Sorry, yeah.
say that's the one that I'm in. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you guys also collaborate a lot with that because you're both looking at kids and adolescents.
Yeah, so I would say they're like our sister lab. So we
Mhm.
collaborate with the grad students and the RAs in that lab all the time. And I've even like collaborated with Dr. Hyde. Um, but yeah, like there's a lot of labs that have, if they have similar research questions, they're using the
Yeah,
same like data set. So
yeah. Or like my lab will often have lab meetings together with Kelly and Harini's lab.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we are almost at 5:30, so if we don't have any other questions, we will go ahead and wrap things up so you guys can go and enjoy the last glimmers of sunlight since it's disappearing faster and faster every day now. Thank you so much, first of all, to our panelists. It was great to see you all again, and we all super appreciate you guys sharing your experience. Those of you who are in the audience, again, just a reminder, the application is due today. So go ahead and scan that in. Or if you lose the code for some reason, go ahead and email me or any of us, and we'll be happy to send that on your way. But again, thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you to all of you for being with us here today. Have a great night.